Okay, welcome everybody. This is the professional mentor webinar for the Wisconsin Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Our guest this evening is Erin Vande Hei. Erin is a teacher of the visually impaired at CESA 8. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you.
This is going to be a question and answer format, so I'll start by answering the questions, and then, as I said, there will be time at the end for the audience to ask questions. So, question one, please begin by telling us a bit about yourself, your job title, what your job entails, and how long you have worked there.
Awesome. My name is Erin Vande Hei, and I am a teacher of the blind and visually impaired, or a TVI, with CESA 8. And I have worked there this is my 21st year, so I almost have 21 years in. And all of that time has been spent working with CESA 8. So I'm an itinerant vision teacher, which means we travel to different school districts within our CESA area and provide services. So that could be supporting students in the classroom, sometimes pull out instruction. We teach Braille. We teach students how to advocate for themselves, how to find, evaluate, and utilize different types of assistive technology in class and in life, and help prepare them for transitioning out of school.
All right, thank you. Can you explain the path that led you to this job?
I absolutely can. I'm going to back it all the way up to birth. So I was born visually impaired. So the name of my eye condition is achromatopsia, and there are two different kinds. There's complete and incomplete. And I have complete because if you're gonna go all the way, which means I have pretty severe light sensitivity. I control the lighting in my house, which is where I am right now. But otherwise, in all other environments, I have sunglasses that are prescription that are tinted for indoors, and then a pair of glasses that are Secret Service dark prescription for outdoors. The glasses I'm wearing right now are just clear, and they only have a distance prescription, and I use them for watching TV. But the other parts of my vision impairment, I have pretty bad nystagmus, which is the involuntary back and forth movement of the eyes. I don't control that. I am very, very nearsighted, and I'm totally colorblind. So I enjoy telling everybody that I'm a bit of a genetic anomaly, because it's typically more common for different types of color blindness to affect males more predominantly than females. And then for someone to be 100% colorblind is even more rare than that. So because I, came out the way I did, I had to learn a whole lot of different advocacy skills and things. And I mean, it was kind of interesting to do. I did not have a vision teacher growing up until I was in 8th grade. And I got services one time a year from a representative from Wisconsin Center for the Blind. She would come up and she would work with me once a year, and she'd be available for like phone calls and stuff throughout the year. But otherwise, my parents made a lot of my accommodations. I remember my mom sitting with a notebook and a ruler and a pen, and she was darkening all of the lines on it for me before Wisconsin Center, told us about dark line paper. She would write all of the names of the crayons bigger, and then like on little pieces of paper, and like tape them onto the crayons. Since I couldn't see the colors, I could at least read them. So when I was in 8th grade, I finally got a vision teacher, and for those of you who know her, she's retired now, but a wonderful and amazing Debbie Deer was my vision teacher. And I kind of always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I guess I was kind of always interested in doing that, although I did find this one paper from 2nd grade once where I think I said I wanted to be an actor, a dancer, a cook, and a teacher. But, as I narrowed it down. And then as a sophomore in high school, I think is when I really solidified it. I had to write actually an essay about like what career I wanted to go into, and I think my teacher like entered it in some contest or something. But that was when I was for sure remember that I want to be specifically a teacher of the visually impaired. And I got to job shadow with Debbie Deer, and that kind of helped me even further solidify what I wanted to do because I got to see the job in action with other people, not just, you know, her coming to teach me.
And you schooling?
Oh, yeah. So at the time, there was no program in Wisconsin to be a teacher of the visually impaired. So I went to Northern Illinois University, and my undergraduate is bachelor's in special ed vision impairments. I do have a master's in educational technology as well, but I got that later from Marion.
Okay, cool.
Oh, and 42 years of life experience.
Okay.
Which only comes in handy sometimes because everyone's situation is so different.
All right, thank you. Please share some of the greatest rewards and challenges to your job.
The greatest rewards. The greatest rewards are most definitely some of the people that I got to meet. When I first started teaching, it was actually kind of weird. Things had come really full circle for me. A lot of the people that I had met through the state and in the vision community were people that had helped me when I was a child. And then here now I, you know, am as a vision teacher working with them as colleagues. That was really cool. It was very neat to, I guess, see that whole thing come full circle. The cool people that I get to meet. I mean, I love our vision community in the state. I think it's great. We're a small community, but we're very close knit, and everyone is awesome. But I think my number one is most definitely the kids. Anytime you see any little bit of success with a kid and you had even a little bit to do with it, that's one of the best things I think pretty much ever. That is the most rewarding thing is when I know that I've imparted a skill or something to a student who, you know, previously was struggling with something and is now able to be successful. That is so unbelievably rewarding. And just getting to meet them too, because the kids have just the best personalities. They're all so different and interesting and fun. And I love it. The biggest challenge that I have is I decided to pick a career that involved the one thing that I can't do, which is drive. So I don't know, I guess I just decided to be, you know, real stubborn about that. And I'm like, well, I want to be an itinerant vision teacher, even though I can't drive. So that is absolutely the biggest issue and probably the most stressful thing I face in my particular job.
Just an aside question, was it difficult getting a position in your home area, like where you grew up?
So I interviewed with CESA 8 when I was still doing my student teaching in Illinois. So it was my senior year of college. I was doing my student teaching and I came home on the weekend to interview for CESA 8. And at the time, I wasn't 100% sure what my caseload was going to be. Technically, where I live right now is actually CESA 7, but
Okay.
CESA 8 took it over like a really long time ago, so kind of like our little property lines are blurred. But our caseloads change all the time. So most of the time I'm pretty close to home, but there've been years where I've been pretty far away as well.
Okay. All right, next question. What are some of the blindness skills that lead to success in your job?
Oh, self-advocacy is number one. I think having that sense of confidence and knowing that you can perform this job just as well, if not better, than any other person who is sighted. I think that goes a long way. If you don't believe in yourself, then nobody else is going to believe in you either. I think the self-advocacy was a huge part. Knowing about my vision impairment, knowing about the types of accommodations and modifications that I need to be successful and when to ask for them. That was a really big thing. Then, of course, there's having to access different types of technology. So learning how to use assistive tech was extremely beneficial, not just for teaching the kids, but like for me too, because I think I started with a laptop when I was at CESA, and I hate laptops. I cannot see the screen very well. I had to use screen enlargement software, so knowing exactly what to ask for to CESA 8. I asked them for at the time it was Zoom text. I'm familiar with this. I know how this works and what it's going to do, and advocated for getting that for myself. If I wasn't prepared for those types of things, I wouldn't have necessarily known what accommodation I needed or how to even help myself. Cane skills actually have also helped because being itinerant, you're going to a lot of different schools, and there's a lot of different places that I haven't been. And I mostly use my white cane in unfamiliar places because it's just too stressful not to. Like the terrain is different, and there could be differences with the traffic or just something unexpected. Sometimes I'm arriving at school like as kids are getting dropped off or as kids are getting picked up, and that is a wild time to be walking around outside, and you definitely want a cane to alert other people to the fact that you can't see them.
Who are some of your mentors and how they influenced or motivated you?
Well, I know it's going to sound really cliche, but my first mentors were most definitely my parents. My parents were absolutely amazing, like from day one. They never, treated me any different than my sighted sister. It was, I had the same expectations on me that anyone else did, and I'm really grateful for the fact that my parents raised me that way and didn't put me in like a little bubble. um, I, the only reason I got orientation mobility instruction the first time when I was 8 years old is because my mom was at the mall and she saw an adult instructing a child on how to use a white cane. And my mom walked up to her at the mall and said, "Will you please teach my daughter?" Like that's how I got O&M for the first time, because of my mom advocating for me. She was my strongest advocate all the way through. She was the one championing every modification at the IEP. The school district actually at the time had wanted to kind of send me to Green Bay, and they thought I needed to be taught Braille and I needed to be with other visually impaired peers. And mom's like, "No, she doesn't. She's fine where she is. You can educate her where she is and you can meet her needs." Um, Funny enough, now that school district I work in, and it's probably one of the most special ed friendly school districts I'm in. It's fantastic. Back when I was there, though, it wasn't quite as accepting. So my mom had to pretty much fight for everything that I had, and it got a lot easier when I finally got a vision teacher in 8th grade, and we had a lot more guidance. Over the years, I was actually also put in touch with other people who are visually impaired. I know that I wasn't diagnosed until I was 3. And when I was diagnosed, I think they referred us to Wisconsin Center for the Blind. And I believe that's how I got put in touch with another family whose daughter was the same age as me and had the same eye condition as me. So our families could kind of collaborate and, lean on each other as they kind of worked through the process of, I guess, how to raise a visually impaired kid. But then we also were put in touch with an adult woman named Amy, and she had the same eye condition as me, and she did a lot of traveling, and she worked for a pharmaceutical company. And it was really awesome to see someone with my eye condition as a successful adult. She was independent, she was married, she had a kid, she traveled for work by herself all the time, and it was very inspirational to be like, "Oh, okay, I can do this." I think it helped my parents a lot too, because it was pretty hard for them when I was little, because until I was diagnosed, they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know if it was going to be degenerative, if it was part of a serious syndrome or something. And my mom would always say, like, it was so hard because I couldn't even find my way home from across the street if the wind was blowing, because I followed voices. So you can tell, like on some of our family videos, that the only way I'm getting around outside is by listening to when my mom speaks and I'm going towards her voice. So from that to like being able to see an adult who, you know, makes all these accommodations for herself and lives a completely full life, that was helpful. And then, of course, Debbie Deer. She was the first vision teacher that I ever received services from. And she was so experienced and so supportive. And she really was able to take the weight off of me and my parents in a way. Like we had a stronger advocate who knew the world of vision impairment, you know, even better than we did at that point. And just being able to have somebody there teach me the different skills that, you know, I wasn't learning in the regular education environment was absolutely invaluable.
Awesome. All right. Looking back to when you were high school age, what would you tell yourself, or what might you have done differently?
Well, I can tell you right now that high school me would not have listened to adult me. And most of my high school students don't really want to listen to me either. But after teaching for 20 years, one thing that I have learned is the high school kids are always listening. They're going to listen to you. And at some point in their life, what you say will become applicable, and they will remember what they were told and the things that they learned, and they will rely on them. I've actually gotten phone calls from past students, you know, saying, hey, do you remember when you told me about this professor that was giving you a hard time, you know, with your vision impairment in college? I'm like, yeah. Well, I encountered the same kind of thing, and then this is what I did about it. And it was like, oh my gosh, that was like 3 years later. I didn't know you were even listening when I was, you know, telling you that story. But I know that it would be the same if I went to talk to myself. But the one thing that I think is true for probably a lot of kids is I really wish I could get myself in high school to understand that using accommodations and advocating for yourself is not embarrassing. No one cares. Like, as soon as you get out of high school and you're in the real world, no one cares. No one's gonna judge you or act weird because you have a cane. No one's gonna judge you or act weird because you're using a monocular in public to read a sign or you're holding a menu really close to your face. And if they do, I can't see far enough to know if they're looking at me anyway, so I don't care. But I mean, you know, you're so self-conscious about everything in high school, and you don't want to use large print. You don't want to use any of your accommodations. And it's like, I just want to be like everybody else. Well, the only way you're going to be like everyone else is if you use your accommodations, because then you can access everything. I really wish that I could get my high school self to know that and believe it. It's one of those things that people told me in high school too. They're like, oh, someday you're not going to care. And I'm like, okay, well, that day's not today. But it is true. Someday you're really not going to care. Whatever you need to do in order to be successful and meet your goals, you're just going to do it.
Yep. All right, last question, then we'll open up to questions from the audience. So since these webinars are designed for students, what is the most important advice you can share with young job seekers?
With young job seekers, I would say, first of all, really having a good, solid, like self-advocacy ability, because once you get out of school and you don't have a vision teacher anymore, you're the only one advocating for you. So knowing exactly what it is that you need and how to ask for it and when to ask for it is going to be probably one of the biggest things that you're going to need to learn. Having that confidence in yourself, you know, when you're interviewing for a job or anything, sometimes you kind of get feelings of doubt, like, are they going to hire me because I have a vision impairment? There's probably a sighted person who can do this better than me. That's not true. If you're using your accommodations and you are working to your potential, then you can do what you put your mind to, and do not be discouraged by, you know, by any negative thoughts or any nervousness that you have. Don't compare yourself to sighted people. You know that you're good for this job, and I can prove it to everybody. It's actually it's kind of it can be kind of a daunting task sometimes, especially where I'm at, being legally blind. And one of the main requirements of my job is to travel, and I can't travel. So over the years, I've been very lucky. I'm just so pleased to work with CESA 8 because they have been so supportive. When I first started teaching, nobody knew really what to do with me because there weren't any non-driving itinerant teachers in the state. So they weren't really sure what to do, like at least not working for a CESA. So we had consulted with DVR, with Wisconsin Center for the Blind, just trying to figure out what are we going to do and how are we going to do it. And to CESA 8's credit, I mean, I was hired before there was a plan in place for my being a driver. So my self-confidence and my skill set spoke for itself. The driving part wasn't a negative or a strike against me when I applied for the job at all. They looked at me, they looked at my skills, and they hired me based on that. And then we had to figure out the driving thing after. So I think definitely I really want to stress that self-advocacy piece and knowing your accommodations and having that self-confidence to know when and how to ask for them.
So it was understood when they hired you, though, that you needed a driver, right?
Yes, they were aware. Oh, that's the other thing too. Something that you're gonna want to figure out for yourself, and I feel this is kind of a personal thing because everyone I think has different thoughts on it and a different level of comfortability with it. But something that high school kids might want to start thinking about as well, if their vision teachers haven't already brought it up, is learning when and how to disclose your vision impairment when you're applying for jobs, because that can be extremely daunting and you want to have the confidence. You don't want to like hide something though from them. I had other jobs, like I worked at a grocery store in a couple different positions that way before, when I was working my way through college and everything. And I remember being really nervous about it. My personal choice was to tell them right in the interview. I went through all of the questions first, and I wanted to make sure that I answered all of the interview questions and, showed them my competency for the job. And then I said, I also have something that that as a future employer, I would like you to know. And then I explained about my vision impairment and, if there are any accommodations or anything that I needed. At the time, I just said I would really prefer not to work on a register because I think that would be too stressful, not knowing where all the keys are for everything. And they were like, sounds great. That's wonderful. But yeah, that's kind of a tricky thing. Like I said, my personal preference was I would go to the interview and I would answer all the questions, go through all of that, and then I would bring up my vision so that everyone was on the same page. Everybody knew, what was needed, but they also got to hear, my qualifications and everything first.
Yeah, I like that approach. Cool. How many different schools do you go to, like in a day or in a week?
Oh my goodness. That can change depending on, like, sometimes if you have a Braille student that you see 2 to 3 hours a day, then your caseload is probably going to be a little bit smaller number wise. Or if you are driving like a significant distance, then your numbers aren't going to be as big. But right now I go to a lot of schools. I think the most I do in one day is 6 or 7 schools in a day. Yeah, yeah. And that's because they're all really close to me right now.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right, well, thank you. I think we can open it up for questions now.
So we have 3 questions from Trisha in the chat. The first one's a 2-parter, Erin.
Mhm.
What kind of accommodations do you use when you go on vacation? What is hard and what is easy?
Oh, going on vacation, I most definitely, whenever I'm going, especially like if I'm riding the plane or flying on a plane anywhere, my personal preference is to fly Delta because the first time I ever flew on a plane ever, it was Delta, and they were so supportive and helpful to me. And then I rode a different airline, I think on a return trip, and I did not have as good of an experience. Whenever I'm booking the plane tickets, I always check the accommodations needed for blind and visually impaired. And then when I arrive at the airport and I check in, I make double sure that those indications are flagged and that people know about it, and ask if someone could bring me to the gate agent so that I can let the gate agent know that I'm going to need help finding my seat. And I kind of have to, go to the gate agent desk at like every stop where I am, just to make absolutely certain, because it has happened before too, where, I'm waiting for everyone else to get off. I usually wait for everybody else to get off the plane first because it's so much less stressful for me. I'd rather sit there and just kind of hang out while everybody else gets out, and then I'll get up and get my stuff. And it's happened several times where when I do that, there's nobody waiting at the gate for me. And then, the flight attendants usually have to call and try and, figure it out. And with the shortage of workers in the airports recently, sometimes that can be pretty challenging. But yeah, most definitely I guess like asking for help and having someone guide me through the airport. That is the most important thing. That, and I always have my iPhone with me, so I use that like a monocular. Like if I really do need to read something around me or try and figure something out, I'll just take a picture and then zoom in on it. I do at the grocery store too, actually, when you can't, see what cans are on the top shelf, and I don't want to pull down every single one of them one by one.
Okay. Trisha's second question is, have you ever thought you would rather go into a night job?
I am a night person. I am definitely a night owl. I'm not a morning person at all. I've kind of, I guess, adapted to it, having to get up and be a teacher. No, I don't think so. I really love the job that I do. I genuinely love the kids that I work with. I call them my kids, or my babies. I absolutely love meeting new kids. I love finding out what's going to work best. Sometimes you get a lot of kiddos that are like puzzles. It's like we're not really sure and we have to try a few different things. And I like the challenge of knowing, all right, we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure out what works best for this kiddo, and we're going to get them on a path to success. And I don't think I'd be able to do that since, school's not a night job. So I just wear my sunglasses indoors and carry on.
My friends I grew up with have the same diagnosis as you, and they couldn't get out of bed during the day because their bodies were just like meant for nighttime.
Oh, I am such a night owl. It is, oh man. Yeah.
Now it made me wonder how hard it is to be a daytime teacher, with
Oh, you know what's hard?
sensitivity. Yeah.
Knocking your outside glasses off the counter so they break. Because I just did that. So now I'm on like my backup pair of old outside glasses, so we can go through the whole process of ordering new ones again. Yay.
Oh, sorry.
Well, actually, that leads us into the next question from Trisha. She was wondering, what color or colors do you use in your sunglasses?
Ooh, so I think right now it's mostly brown, like the darkest brown that they can get, with sometimes they add gray to try and get the brown even darker. And there's usually a reddish tint in there. And I do not know why, but there's something with achromatopsia that like red in the lenses is really helpful. I don't know if it helps filter the light. I'm not really sure the science of why that works, but having some level of like redness in there too does help, but like not too much. When I was little, like they would used to give me like just like a huge uncut lens of all different types of tints, and they'd layer them on top of each other, and I'd look around inside, then go outside and look around with them. And once we found the ones that worked, then the optician would write that down, and then that was good for a while. And then I would switch, eye doctors, and they use a different lab. So now we have to start the process again. And it's like you learn something different every time you have to go through that process, I guess. But yeah, one time we had like way too much red. I think one year they're like, oh, red is good for you? Sweet, we're going to put vermilion in there. That wasn't great. Like instead of the snow being violently white, it was violently pink, and it hurt just as much.
Do we
Wait,
have
did I answer the question?
You sure did.
Okay.
I was just going to ask, do we have any other questions? You can unmute yourself and ask, or you can put them in the chat.
I just want to thank you for answering my question.
Anytime. Oh, that, that's another thing too. I don't know how other people feel about this, but my more outgoing students and I kind of talk about it too. I sort of like to put a little olive branch out there for the sighties. Like, I would prefer that everyone ask me questions. I would rather you not make an assumption about me. I would just rather you ask me. And I tell people that flat out too. If I'm entering a new work environment and stuff, like I'll tell them just flat out, if you have any questions, like let me know. I'm happy to answer them anytime. And I think that sort of makes everyone have like a sigh of relief around you, like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry, because people get so, worried about if I say, look at this and she can't see it, did I just offend her? And I'm like, I mean, maybe some people, but definitely not me. I also do this thing. My mom taught me this one. She goes, what'll start making people more comfortable too is when you're meeting someone for the first time, pretend that there's something on your lenses and take your sunglasses off and pretend to clean them on your shirt, just because then they can see you for a second without your sunglasses on. And that, for some reason, is apparently more comforting to sighted people. So really? I always kind of find a way to do that too. Yeah. And it does help. I guess it's sort of like when you're wearing sunglasses. I mean, if you're not visually impaired, I think people look at that as like being rude. You're wearing sunglasses indoors. You're putting a barrier between you and I when we're communicating. And, even though people know that I'm visually impaired, I really do think it helps if I just pop my glasses off for a second, wipe them on my shirt, look at them while they're talking, and then put them back on. That's a weird thing that I've always done. I don't think I've actually ever said that out loud.
No, that's really good to know. I mean, that is really helpful to tell other people in our field,
It's a thing, I guess, and in my experience, it's just easier for me if I can put the people around me in my job environment or wherever I am at ease first, because it's like, right. I really don't want my vision to be any kind of weird elephant in the room or some kind of barrier, but between, getting to know you and being able to, complete my job. So I'm going to break that ice real quick. Just going to let you know, ask me whatever you want. It's totally cool. And then we'll go from there.
Yep.
I appreciate you. I've learned a lot.
Aw, yay. I am a teacher. When I was a kid, I used to love to draw. And I, quote, invented this thing because I knew when I was younger that I wanted to be a teacher. But the thing that always worried me when I was younger, when I was like little, like early elementary age, was I'm not going to be able to see any of the kids raising their hand in class. Like, what do I do? So I drew like little plans for this device where I had a board with lights in front of me, and each light corresponded to the position of a student's desk. And the kids would have to wear bracelets that when they would raise their hand, the light would light up so that I knew exactly which kid was going to be asking a question. And that was something I like made up when I was really little, because I was like, I want to be a teacher, but like, I won't be able to see well enough to do that. I have to invent something to make that happen.
That's brilliant.
I love that.
Of course, I mean,
Yeah.
I had to do practicums in regular education settings when I was in college for my bachelor's degree. Like you do your student teaching with an itinerant teacher of the visually impaired, and you do a practicum in a vision room, but I also had to do regular practicums in a first and second grade room. So, I mean, you don't need a special device. You just walk around while you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that experience in college.
Yeah. I was nervous about it then too, and my cooperating teacher was like, just walk around. She's like, they're in first grade. They're not even gonna know you can't see them. Like, just walk around, and then as they raise their hand, you can call on them, because you'll be right by them. I'm like, oh yeah, that tracks. That's easy. I can do that.
Not that we don't love Trisha, and she can ask more questions, but does anybody else have anything? Trisha's always our question person.
I mean, if anybody is watching this as a YouTube video later or after the fact and you weren't able to attend the actual webinar, if you do have any specific questions for me, go ahead and pop them down in the comments and I can answer anything too.
Awesome.
Will you get
Right.
notification for that then in the video? Oh,
Well, no, no, because I'm not the one posting it. But if I just go back and check periodically, I'm chronically online. I'm always on YouTube anyways, so.
Erin, what year did you said you went to Marion and Northern Illinois University?
Yeah.
So did you get your bachelor's in Illinois and your master's in Marion?
Yes. Yep, I graduated in May of 2004 from Northern Illinois University with the bachelor's in education, special education, vision impairments. And then later, I graduated in 2012 from the master's program for educational technology at Marion University, which I did that one because I was actually having a little bit of trouble grasping some of the base technology. Like, I was being asked how my visually impaired and blind and low vision students are going to access all this technology, and I didn't really understand some of the base technology to start with. So I'm like, I don't know how to adapt that because I really don't know how it works to start with. So instead of doing like a master's in something vision related or in something that I was already good at, but then just like getting a higher degree in it, I'm like, no, I'm going to do something I'm bad at. I'm going to get a little more instruction there.